want to talk to you about today is the question of spiritual teachers or spiritual mentors. So I want to approach the question of a spiritual teacher or mentor from these 3 points. Finding a mentor or a teacher, working with a mentor or a spiritual teacher, and then leaving the spiritual teacher or mentor. If you like this shtick, hit the subscribe and hit the like button. Okay, now, teachers. Finding a spiritual teacher or a spiritual mentor is not as easy or simple as like finding a doctor or a plumber. It's more akin to like a business partnership or even a romantic partnership. So what's the best way to look for a romantic partner, if that's going to be our analogy here? Not desperately and not greedily, right? But you have to put yourself out there. You have to get out of your house. As terrifying as that is, there it is. You got to get out of your house. I've been sitting here trying to think of clever ways to give you shortcuts to finding spiritual communities with leaders that might appeal to you, but you're not an idiot. You know what to do. You've read books that seem to have bits of wisdom in them, written by people in lineages, the Zen lineage, the Vedantic lineage, the Tibetan lineage, the mindfulness lineage, if it's a lineage. You know what to do. You just gotta Google teachers and communities in your area and see if there's a sitting group you can join. And then you just slut yourself about. That's what I did. I started with the Diamond Way community in Los Angeles. Then I went over to the Shambhala people. After gallivanting all about town, spiritually carousing with different teachers in different communities, I eventually found my Zen mentor. So I feel like this is the moment to maybe pause and get a little bit personal, in part because I kind of want to tell a funny story, and also because I think speaking personally will help me flesh out kind of some of the, I don't know, pro tips for working with a spiritual teacher or a mentor. Like, how do you do it, you know? And my answer would be, my number one answer would be, you gotta surrender. You gotta surrender. Surrender is not the same thing as submission. You're not submitting to the will of the teacher. You're surrendering your ego. So I met my mentor. He taught me how to sit. We became close. He now lives in Argentina, and his name is Delbert. So, Big D and I would go out when we were living in West Hollywood for margaritas. He is gay, and we developed a friendship that was deep and meaningful, and at least initially there was some attraction on his part. So that created a dynamic between us. But eventually, all of that got clarified, and it was a mentor and a mentee relationship. I'm losing clothing. It's getting hot in here. Okay, so I wrote about this in my book, Zen Confidential, but it's a funny story and it never gets old. One day, he contacts me, and out of nowhere, so I'm surprised, and he says, let's meet. So we go to this dog park in West Hollywood, and we went to like the supermarket before that, and we got some like sushi in a plastic tray kind of situation, and we're eating it, and he's behaving very coldly towards me. So I'm like, what's wrong? And he says, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, don't you have something to tell me? And he's like scolding me like a parent who's found my stash of hidden candy or something. And I trust this man. So he never crossed a boundary with me, no matter how intense our friendship became. He never took advantage of me or did any sexual misconduct, right? It was always a dharmic friendship, ultimately, okay? And I trusted him. So when I talk about surrender, sometimes it's like when we find a teacher and we start working with a teacher or a mentor and we really begin to surrender, the situation goes in directions that we didn't expect, okay? And there's no template anymore. There's no Pema Chodron chapter on this. There's nothing in the Bhagavad Gita about what to do when you're eating sushi out of a plaster tray with your mentor and he's scowling at you, trying to get you to confess something. So he says, okay, all right, obviously you don't want to tell me, so let's go to the video store. I was like, okay, let's go to the video store. So we go down the street to the video store. It's the Circus of Books, which is a bookstore in the front, and then in the back there's dirty movies. At least there used to be. So we go in the back, and he rents a movie, a dirty movie, and it's called Glory Holes of Chicago. I'm like, where is this going? Well, it went back to my apartment. We sat down, we put the DVD in, and he fast-forwarded to the end of this DVD. And lo and behold, there is a gentleman, unclothed, wearing a sailor's hat, being taken advantage of or pleasuring a host of other sailors. They were having their way with him. Now, that's not unique. This happens in gay porn. But the strange thing is, and I am not kidding you, this guy named Daniel Reed, you can look him up, was a dead ringer for me at the time. But he was like the hot version of me. And I looked at my mentor, I'm like, okay, I understand now. And my mentor was like, look, you told me, you weren't gay, that you didn't like guys sexually. And here you are, pleasuring many men sexually. And I was like, I was in a zone of complete trust of my mentor. And the situation was very strange. And I was like, out ahead of my skis here, okay? I mean, it was a bizarre moment, but I trusted it. And for a second there, given how crazy my life was at that time, I thought, is it me? I don't know. And I just opened my mind. I said, well, it's not me, but I don't know how to prove it to you. My mentor, so we watched the movie a little bit, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. This man had touched me with his teachings, and I knew I was on a path, an important path, and I wanted to see where it went. Well, finally, after 10 minutes of watching this, my mentor was like, aha! It's not you. And I had said earlier, it's not me because the guy's muscles were big and he had nice calves and thighs and I've got little monkey legs. But my mentor was like, 6 months of working out and you could have those thighs too. So, but then in the end, he was like, this guy has a long middle toes and you have short middle toes. So it's not you, unless you were wearing prosthetic toes, which seems far-fetched. So, as you can see, surrendering to and working with a teacher, a mentor, can take you to some pretty strange places that are going to be fairly unique to your life situation and their life situation and their character and your character. So this is why it's important to find some teacher that you really connect with. Because you may have to sit on a couch with them someday and explain how it's not you in the gay porn movie. My mentor, the Big D, whom I have just mentioned here, introduced me to his teacher who became my teacher, the Roshi. Working with Roshi over many years, I learned a key point about the student-teacher relationship, and I am hesitant to make that point because it's a truism. It's so simple, but it's really true. If your head is up your patootie, your teacher is not going to be able to pull it out. They will not be able to pull your head out of your ass. Seems like a simple point, not something we have to belabor here because we're all adults, but man, it was all adults at the monastery where I lived, and all of us at one time or another basked in the presence of this great teacher and on some level expected him to rescue us. So if we have a great teacher, a Roshi, it's easy to get bedazzled by this person. And it's really easy to want to give up responsibility for yourself or your practice or your spiritual life. So as a note of caution in working with teachers, I would say surrender is like the gateway through which you have to go every time you're working with a teacher. But what are you surrendering? You're not surrendering responsibility for yourself or your practice. You're surrendering your ego. You're surrendering your fixed ideas. You're surrendering the things, the notions, the parts of yourself that you're attached to, but never your personal responsibility. There's only so far you can go with a teacher, and to hold that notion, really hold it. There's only so far you can go with the teacher. Then you begin to understand that what the practice really is becoming a better and better student or practitioner. And the better you become, the better of a student you become, the less you need a teacher, which is to say your surroundings and your circumstances begin to show you what you need to see and teach you what you need to know. You just have to open your ears and eyes to the relationships and circumstances around you. You need to basically get back into your life. So that's why at the Zen monastery where I came from, we had a very clear path. You spent like a few years as a monk training, then you became a priest, and after about 10 years at the monastery, your work there was done, and you left, and you returned to the world. I want to close on the fan story. I forget if I've told this story before on my YouTube channel, but it's an interesting story, and it kind of encapsulates my feeling about finding, working with, and leaving a teacher. So my teacher, Sasaki Roshi, was a very old man, and he needed a lot of help getting around, moving around. So when I became the head monk, I would have to pick him up with his attendant, put him in the car, drive him down the snowy driveway, put him in his wheelchair, wheel him through the snow that we had to shovel, bring him into the dining hall. This was all in preparation for his teishos, which were his public talks on a koan, right? And I remember one day he looked up at me like he was surprised to see me. And he was like, "Oh, I give you fan. I give you my fan." And I have it here. I have the fan, right? So it was kind of a moment. It's in this little casing here. It brings back memories when I open it up. So he gives me this fan, right? And his Inji or attendant was there. It's 8/22/08, MBZC, the Mount Baldy Zen Center. And she wrote a little note for me, his attendant. She said, Joshu Roshi asked Gento Shika, Shika's the head monk, Gento was my monk's name, Gento Shika to take responsibility for his fan. Gento said, I will. So, in the lineage, when you get a fan, there are these little markers it's called Inca, right? So Roshi was always a bit messing with his students on this sort of thing, like seeing where your ego is at, like, oh, you will be my successor, you take my fan, or only you truly understand my teachings, right? But I didn't get the sense in this moment that he was doing that, and I definitely do not think that he was giving me Inca and telling me I am his successor. I don't know what he was doing, but I've always kept this old ancient fan of his that he asked me to take responsibility for, and I've kept it and I hold it as a kind of a symbol. It's actually kind of just a little bit of a piece of junk on some level, right? It's very old, but it's just cardboard painted with some old dry balsa wood, right? But this fan is like my practice. It's humble, it's a little cheap, it's old, and it's precious to me. And I take responsibility for it. It's my responsibility, right? It's my teacher was giving my practice back to me when he gave me this fan. Whatever power I had entrusted him with, he was offering it back. Your training is over. You're the master now. So when you leave the teacher, you're leaving the teacher with all the projections that you put on that teacher. You're reclaiming them. But hopefully by working with the teacher, you can come into your full potential as a human being through the tool of the mentor-mentee, student-teacher relationship and the practice, which is so precious and just keeps getting passed down through all the political shitstorms and all the religious upheavals and all the technological transformations and all the years and centuries that pass, just keeps getting passed down through people who connect and want to work with each other, like we're connecting now and maybe working together now. That's it. That's all it is. Thanks for listening. If you like what you saw here today, you can go to my Patreon page, which I'm putting in the video description below. Got a great community there, a lot of really smart and sincere and interesting practitioners who comment on essays and blogs and videos and other stuff that I post over there on Patreon. So check it out. Link in description below. I'm going to go take a nice hot shower and shave my beard. Ciao, friends.